The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It is a Friday. It is one of the rare overreaction Fridays that we've ever had. Not a whole lot of Thursday games in Atlanta United's history, and not a lot like the one yesterday morning, not just because of the start time either. 2 red cards, one for a second yellow to Jake Mulroney, one late to J.J. Williams, and Atlanta United loses 1-0 to Cincinnati, a team that was very defensive, very tactical, even after the first red card, and did enough to get the win, and that's all that matters. So we're going to break down all of that. We're going to take all of your reactions as long as we can today. Mike Conti will join us at 9:30, talk to him about how everything went yesterday as well. And I'm sure the Twitter line is lighting up this morning and last night and yesterday afternoon, because there's been a lot of time to react to this thing since it was a 9 o'clock kick. John, you're in charge. Call it, start it wherever you want.
All right. Well, since I've been kind of biting my tongue and just kind of formulating an opinion and a thought pattern, let me just put my stuff out there first.
Okay.
Since I haven't had the opportunity to. And if folks know certain things where they can fill in the details, would love to hear it. I don't know what the review process is, and I admit that I'm starting off with the low-hanging fruit. I don't know what the review process is for pro. I don't know how frequent it is. But I would hope that, in NASCAR, after a race, if you anger NASCAR officials, you get called to the big red truck. I would hope that the equivalent for pro does that for Victor Rivas whenever they have their next scheduled meeting. I told you yesterday, and I'm becoming almost apoplectic in trying to figure out what I'm going to say this morning, because I had all day yesterday to say it, and I was saying it all day yesterday, and now I'm trying to say it today, and my brain is working faster than my mouth. I'm just going to go ahead and start at the beginning temporarily. I'm going to sit here and say that the inconsistency with his whistle, the inconsistency in giving cards, the inconsistency of having folks still hanging out on the pitch. I have no earthly idea how Matthew Duplon still was out there after the 60th minute, after his bang-bang whistles, which should have been 2 yellow cards, especially after the second incident with Ezequiel Barco. Clear and obvious for me on offside calls, which negated penalty kick opportunities. I'm still scratching my head on that one. The no call on Edgar Castillo at the edge of the area. Once again, there are instances all the way through. I give Joe Jow, going backwards in time, all the credit in the world. Very, very savvy play, and Jake got caught. So there were instances all the way through that I just quit taking notes when it came to Victor Rivas and how he was handling the match. The interaction with Fotis Bazakis, who was the video assistant referee. We've talked in the past about how when you have a very young VAR and an experienced official, the young VAR isn't going, if he sees something, he's probably not going to sit there and raise his hand to the experienced center ref and go, hey, I see something. We had the inverse in this match. I think that Fotis Bazakis inserted himself in instances that really he should have either not or continued to review what was on the tape, especially with the Mulroney red, second yellow, which turned into the red.
VAR can't look at that.
Okay.
It's a second yellow. It's not a straight red. They cannot get involved in that one.
Okay. So, all right, then I'll put that one back to the side. But the J.J. Williams red, the straight red at the end, I have no idea. But also
I got to push back on that one. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
JJ got himself into a situation you can't do. Waston took advantage of him. But I didn't think it was as egregious as others did, because I didn't see a kick out. I saw him get knocked over, and his leg was up, and Waston was leaning over him, and JJ might have pushed him off with his leg. It's different. It's a red. It's kind of hard to argue that it's not a red because there's some kind of contact, but it was all initiated by Waston. I don't have a massive issue with it. I have an issue with how long it took to get there. And I have an issue with it felt like it was looking pretty hard for something. And was that necessary at that point in the game because it wasn't blatantly obvious? No. Yeah. But you see it. It's not smart from Williams, and he put himself in that situation. I don't love it, but it didn't affect anything with the match. Okay,
then let me go to the PK that was pulled back.
Yeah, I have a huge issue with that. Let me just say a couple of things about something that's been going through my head here because I see the word excuses thrown around a lot, and I want to make something clear from my perspective. And Gwen agrees with me, I guess, because we talked about it last night.
There you go.
To talk about a game like this, and to talk about a lot of games, you have to talk about everything that happened in the game. Referees are part of the game, and there are things about the referees that you have to talk about in the context of this game. You also talk about an early red card and how that affects it. To try to say that an early red card is not a good enough excuse, I'm sorry, that's just incorrect. It's not an excuse. It's something that happened that affected the way the game played out. You go back and you look at I saw a couple studies, big documents with a lot of research on the effects of red cards. Went back to read it because I was looking for MLS stats on teams that had a first half red card and what the record was after that, and I couldn't find anything. And I found some studies on the Premier League, and it's generally if a red card happened in the first minute, if you played 90 minutes of the match, the effect of both the diminished impact of your attack playing with 10 and the increased impact of the opponent's attack because they're playing with a man advantage. If it happened to start the match, it's about 1.45 goals. This is according to a few different research studies that have been done. Where this red card happened in the match, it's more than a goal of a swing. That early in the match, it's going to swing a goal towards the team that's playing with the man advantage. That's going from years and years of Premier League research of red cards and when they happened and what happened afterwards, et cetera, et cetera. So to say that it didn't affect it, no. I think it was amplified even more because of the conditions. Yeah. And that made it even more difficult. So it's hard, and I've seen a lot of conversations about the team didn't play well after the red card. No, they didn't, because they were playing with a man down in very difficult conditions that made it harder when it's already really hard. It's hard to try to take a lot out of the way the team played from a tactical perspective, from a how impactful they were in their attack when you're playing with a man down in that. It's just a fact. I think the second yellow on Mulroney was fine. I think Mulroney got himself in a bad position, and that's what created the whole incident. He put his arm out to try to slow Joe Jiao down, and Jiao grabbed the arm and did what an attacker should do. He made the most of it, but Mulroney gave him the opportunity to make the most of it. Second yellow.
Yeah.
My two major issues with the referee and the way things were handled were the penalty at the end of the first half and the process for pulling that back, and the lack of a second yellow on Mathieu Duplan in the second half. Because if those two things had happened, just like we're talking about the impact of a red card, the impact of other things, the impact of those not happening is very important on the outcome of the match. Howard Webb said this. I went back and read an article from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Jonathan Tannenwald wrote this in January. And this was back when the conversations about VAR in the Premier League were off the handle about offside and Hawkeye technology, and he's offside by an armpit and all that kind of stuff. Now, remember, MLS explored using Hawkeye technology, but they opted not to. It's when you have that technology, it's not like you just show up with some cameras and then draw some lines. Like, you're going out and you're you're measuring the pitch, like the pitch of the field, you're where the cameras are, and you're setting it up so when something happens, you can use the technology to tell you where lines would be. And when you're determining offside, that's what you're looking for. MLS didn't do that. And this is what Howard Webb said at the time about the way offside would be handled in MLS without the technology. He said the on-field officials make an onside, offside judgment, and that will be considered correct unless the VAR identifies, in their opinion from looking at the footage, a clear and obvious error. It will then be deferred to the match referee to make a final judgment by reviewing the footage at the pitch side monitor. Now, that's completely different than the Premier League, and that has to be understood. The Premier League has the technology to where it's not a go look at the pitch side monitor on offside. They draw the lines, they take a look, it's yes or no. There's no judgment, and it's always looked at, as any goal is always looked at, but that gives you a clear yes or no. You can argue about clear all you want, you can argue about margin for error, but that gives you something that MLS doesn't have. Webb set the expectation in January, and he oversees Professional Referees Organization Pro, that the only way it comes back, and I didn't see a flag come up, there was no discussion of a flag coming up, so It was not considered offside on the field. The VAR must have identified a clear and obvious error. Mm-hmm. I didn't see an angle to show that. Maybe there was. Maybe they didn't show the angles that the referee was looking at, although they were showing us what it looked like the referee was looking at. Mm-hmm. The way that was handled is not the way this has been handled this season. It's not the way this has been handled in this tournament. I had a huge problem with it. I had a huge problem with the length of time it took because it felt like the thing you don't want VAR to do. Does that take away from Atlanta giving up a goal in the second half that they did not step out to close down on the shot from Frankie Amaya? No, it doesn't. Nope. But to throw it to the side and say it doesn't matter, it's not true. That's just not true. The second yellow situation with Mathieu Deplan, Fernando Meza talked about it after the match, and that was maybe one of the more maddening things. It might have even been more maddening than the penalty situation, because it's a strict judgment call by the referee, and we have already seen a willingness to not worry about the time in the match to show a second yellow. You don't normally see second yellows in the first half. It's not common. Referees are reluctant to throw red cards or second yellows in the first half. You don't want to change the match. We talked about this with Mark Geiger and England-Colombia 2018 World Cup, for example. It was a success story for him to keep that match 11v11 on the field. You want that. You want the teams to decide it. But Rivas showed you that he was going to make the call if he felt like it was the call. And I don't disagree with the second yellow to Mulroney. I don't disagree with either yellow. But in this case, it's egregious that there's not a second yellow, because the second foul that Deplan committed, and he had committed quite a few before that, the second one was awful. It studs up on the ankle, on the touchline. And the explanation that Meza was given, and what he said, the referee told him, was that one was going to goal and one wasn't. That has nothing to do with the yellow card. That has zero to do with the yellow card. Maybe it's just trying to get the player to walk away from you. I don't know. That has zero to do with it. Studs up on the ankle is studs up on the ankle, wherever it happens on the field. You don't get a pass for that. I had a huge issue with it, especially after he had just seen a yellow card. The way the yellow cards were thrown out, and you have to talk about it because you saw a second yellow for Atlanta. You didn't see one for Cincinnati. Cincinnati committed 19 fouls. They got their second and third yellows in the 86th minute and then in like the 101st minute. They were meaningless. Those yellows are meaningless. So, you committed, I'd have to look back to see how many fouls they committed after that fact. Let's say they committed 15 fouls before and only had one yellow. And many fouls were tactical. Many fouls were professional fouls, and they weren't carded. And that makes it really difficult to play in a way where you're trying to control possession and you're getting hit and plays are getting broken up. Eric Remedi was fouled 8 times in the match. I mean, that's craziness. 8 times. That's... Ezequiel Barco is one of the most fouled players since 2017, and he's fouled on average 3.5 times per 90 minutes. Remedi was fouled 8 times yesterday because every time he'd turn and try to start an attack, foul, foul, foul. You know, you can talk about the referee and the way they manage the game because they affect the way the game plays out. You can talk about Atlanta not creating a whole bunch of chances. They played a man down, but they didn't create enough chances to get the result. You can talk about the defending on the Frankie Amaya goal, which he had way too much space. You can talk about all of that. But what you can't do when you break down a game like this, in my opinion, is you can't zero in on one thing and say nothing else matters or it's excuses. Because that's not the way the game plays out. The game is very simple in that we know you score goals, you win. Flat out. It's very simple in that way. There's no judges off to the side, giving scoring points and then adding that and then multiplying this. No, it's pretty simple. It's also very complicated because so many different things affect how it plays out and how those goals or not goals happen. There's a lot of stuff that happens in a 90-minute match. Even more when it's about 110 because of all the stoppage time, or 125 or whatever. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. But you can't pick and choose and say, well, that didn't matter. That we're not going to talk about. That's an excuse. This is not an excuse. It's all part of it. And right now, you're also adding all kinds of other elements into what this tournament is. It's very difficult for these teams. It's very difficult to break things down. It's very difficult to understand everything that's happening. It's very difficult across the board. I understand the frustration completely, and I wanted to say what I thought from yesterday about that and make that clear that it's not the referee's fault. It's not like one thing decided this match. But I have a big question about the way the penalty was handled, and I have a maybe bigger question about the lack of a second yellow to Duplan. Both of those affected the way the game played out. They absolutely did. Yeah.
And the game in and of itself, to me, I've always kind of treated it like a big puzzle. Because the pieces are there, and over 102 minutes, you have a puzzle that will look a certain way with a windmill and all these kinds of things. But each puzzle piece contributes to the puzzle itself being completed. And so you have to talk about the yellows, you have to talk about the officiating, you have to talk about Frankie Mai, you have to talk about him having too much space. All of these different elements that contributed to this 102-minute puzzle. And honestly, for me, the way that I look at, I know that a lot of folks were wondering about Adam John, and when you're a man down, you have to change your philosophy. And that, to me, is part and parcel as to why Adam John was pulled. You have an idea at 11v11, then when you get a red card, you have to adjust. And the thought pattern was, okay, I have to adjust a man down, and that's why John comes off. And you have
Frank
to
DeBoer talked about that after the match. He said that he wanted to keep Barco and Pitti on because he felt like the game would be decided by 1v1 moments at that point, and that's not John's strength. I said it on Southern Fried Soccer yesterday with Doug Robertson. Hindsight being 2020, which you have that huge advantage of talking about that after the match. I think maybe once we saw how the legs went pretty quickly for Barco and Pitti, maybe you would have been better off to play John up top and rearrange to make something else because he would have been fresh. You would have had the opportunity to just make the game a slog and play direct and just bomb it to John and try to play off of him, and maybe Cincinnati opens up a little bit more. And I would have expected them, I think the same thing that Frank said in his thought process, I would have expected with that red card when it happened, that at a minimum start second half, Cincinnati would have come out more. That would have created the 1v1 opportunities for Pitti and Barco. And then, okay, maybe that plan works. Didn't happen that way. I didn't expect it. I don't think anybody did. Everybody was complaining about Cincinnati not coming out to play with a man advantage. If you had known that Cincinnati would have played that way, then yeah, John would have been the better option in my opinion, because what could Atlanta have done differently with Adam John on and Cincinnati playing the way they did? You could have played direct. You could have played long. You could have tried to have him knock the ball down and play whoever you're going to keep on, whether Pitti or Barco, in, or play your wingbacks in. You didn't know that. That's the hard part about it. When you have an early red card, it's a tough decision on how you're going to handle it. I just think maybe John would have been fresher, and maybe those 1v1 opportunities that Frank was looking for with Pitti and Barco didn't materialize too much, although you earned a penalty call from one, and that might have been enough in a normal situation. So it's hard. You get an early red card, Merritt Paulson said it yesterday. I think he's dead on. You get an early red card like that, the game's done. Mm-hmm. The game's done. I mean, anything you pull out of that is a miracle. Game's done with an early red card. Everything changes.
And at the same time, we've talked about the Duplon no second yellow. I think that Atlanta United would have won the match if it had gone to a 10v10 and Duplon had been taken off, because you had, another 40 minutes of action from that moment?
I can't say that you would have won the match. I don't think anybody can say that, but it would have played out differently. There's no way to deny that, because it would have been 10v10 for a long time. So you can't say, just like you can't say, well, Atlanta would have won if they had 11v11 the whole way. We don't know that. I think they would have had a much greater chance to, but we don't know. That's the hard part about decisions like that, because when they're made or not made, you can't really call what would have happened or what could have happened. It's a guessing game. The thing changed. The early red card to Mulroney changed everything for Atlanta on the day. The no penalty changed everything from that moment. The lack of a second yellow that would have made it 10v10 changed everything from that moment. It would have been different if you'd called it differently. It's just that's why it's hard to be a referee.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to be a referee, because that's the pressure you deal with. When you call that second yellow on Mulroney, you know that you are dramatically changing the way this game's going to be played. You're changing what could have happened. Good referees will make that call. He made the right call. Don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with some of the other calls, because he showed, I think, a lot of courage in calling that second yellow when he did, because we've seen it. It gets talked about all the time on a broadcast. He's on a yellow. That would have been a yellow if he wasn't already on one.
That's orange.
Yeah. No, not even that.